This week's episode of the Rural Woman Podcast is brought to you by the patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast. This amazing group of individuals contribute financially to the Rural Woman Podcast to ensure the stories of women in agriculture hit your earbuds each and every week. Want to join them in supporting the stories of women in agriculture while getting access to extended episodes, patron-only episodes, and other great perks? Head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more about how you can become a patron through Patreon. Hi, I'm Caitlin Dubin, and this is the Rural Woman Podcast. I'm a first-generation farmer who married into agriculture. Born and raised in a city, I was so unfamiliar with where my food came from, but I was determined to figure it out. Through my journey into agriculture, I saw women who were strong but humble, often taking a back seat. To me, these women were leaders who deserved a seat at the table. I created the Rural Woman Podcast to share the voices of women in an industry whose stories often went untold. The rural entrepreneurs who live and breathe their work, full of grit and pride. We come here to share our stories, to be in community with each other, to be challenged and inspired, but most importantly, to be celebrated and to be heard. We may not all live, farm, ranch, or homestead the same, but we are all connected. We are rural women, and our stories are worthy of being told. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rural Woman Podcast. Today you'll meet Madeline Pranaitis. Madeline is a first-generation farmer from Connecticut with a passion for animals sparked by childhood visits to her aunt's farm. She earned a degree in livestock and draft power, gaining experience with draft horses and oxen. Now in upstate New York, Madeline manages a calf program on a dairy farm, runs her homestead, and has realized her dream of owning a team of draft mules. I cannot wait for you to meet Madeline. She is as sweet as can be and has a great story to share. Without further ado, my friends, let's get to this week's episode with Madeline. Madeline, welcome to the Rural Woman Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I am so excited to dive into the multi-layers of the multi-passionate Madeline that you are in agriculture. So before I fangirl too much, for the folks who are unfamiliar with you, can you tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you got your start in agriculture?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm beyond excited. I've been a long time listener. So my name is Madeline Pranaitis. I am from a really small town in Connecticut on the Farmington River. I'm not from a farm family. I actually got a lot of my inspiration from my aunt, who is no longer with us, but she had a horse boarding business that is still run today. And she was such an influence on me with her love for animals. So I definitely got that from her and continued that on in my interests growing up, horseback riding. I did farm camp over the summer. We got to, collect the eggs and things like that. And it just developed my interest into continuing on with agriculture in my later years through 4-H and right into college as well.
Very cool. I love the inspiration that can come from family members and their loves and their hobbies. And myself not growing up on a farm and in a farm family, I did have cousins who had horses, and I always thought I would just love to have a horse. And my parents gave me the option, you could have a horse or you could have a four-wheeler and we could go camping on the weekends. So that's the route that I took, but eventually ended up on a farm. But tell us about your 4-H journey. What did you do in 4-H?
So I gravitated towards raising a heifer through the dairy club. So my town was definitely not a farming community. It once was just really small dairies. but it was more geared towards like lacrosse and football, that sort of atmosphere. And I was just really a farm kid at heart. And I remember going up to my mom because one of my best friends was in 4 H in the next town over. And I used to see her every week at church when we'd go to Sunday school, and she'd tell me all about, what she was working on with her chickens and rabbits and things. And she's like, "You should join." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll go ask my mom." And they had a dairy cattle group, and they would show over the summer at a little, county fair. And so I went and asked my mom, I'm like, "Mom, like, can I get a cow?" And she's like, "Madeline, like, we live in a suburb. Like, where do you think we're gonna have a—" She was completely confused. And I thought it was a great idea. I didn't think anything of it. And I'm like, "Well, you just pay $20 and you can have one. Like, it's that simple, Mom. Like, we can totally do this." And after finding out a little bit more information, of course, the animal stays at the local farm in the really small town called Granby, Connecticut. It's a little bit more of like a rural setting compared to, like, where I grew up in a suburb. You can go as often as you wish and you work with your animal. And when the fair comes around, you enter into your age group class. You wear all white, which to this day I just always feel super impractical when you're working with animals to have to just wear all white. But it just really solidified my passion for animals and working with animals every single day. It was something I looked forward to after school. Ended up developing into a degree in college, and that turned into a career.
All from that $20 cow that your mom just was so confused by.
Yeah.
I love that. And, growing up, we have 4-H here, and it was something that I didn't even know was an option if you weren't a farm kid. And to hear so many incredible stories of people who have found their way to 4-H some way, somehow, and have them connect not only with animals, but to other kids. And just to have those skills as a kid and all of the different people that you meet, I think those are lifelong lessons that you learn.
Oh, absolutely. It really followed me through everything that I have done since, especially with, public speaking or, doing class projects or group projects or just working, in my job, learning how to network and reach out to those who know a little bit more than I do in the area that, I have questions in. And it's just developed this like great community, all just kind of working together.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us about your schooling and your college. What did you take? Where did you go? And what have you done with it?
So in high school, I had a lot of concussions. So I wasn't able to travel as much as I would like to go visit colleges. So I did take a post-grad year in between high school and college. And the program offered some classes at the high school level and then also a few on the college level. And then we did this project. So basically, we could pick any project that we wanted to do that was some sort of educational aspect. You had to write up a proposal and propose your idea. And I wanted to bring a chicken coop to campus. And mind you, where this campus is located is in East Hartford, in Hartford, Connecticut. It's a city. So eventually, after multiple revisions of this proposal, I had to jump through a lot of extra hoops. And I definitely ruffled some feathers on that campus, no pun intended. But I really was really on this project, and I wanted to give my fellow students an opportunity to sort of be around animals like how I did with 4-H. Without that kind of exposure, I wouldn't have really known what it was about, and then I wouldn't have known how much I wanted to pursue it. So I got 4 chickens from the place that I used to go to farm camp from, and I used my proposal money to buy a little chicken coop and brought them there. And I did a presentation in front of my whole entire school, holding one of my chickens in front of all these people, explaining my project and how, passionate I am about agriculture and what I've been doing in 4-H, and just kind of like share with everybody who may have never even seen a chicken in person. And it just really sparked that passion from there on out. Ended up pursuing a degree in livestock, and I got my bachelor's of animal science at SUNY Cobleskill in New York State. And it's a 4-year program. I did about 3 years on campus, and in between there, I had various farm jobs, whether it be on a dairy farm or not, just working with animals in between semesters. And then I transferred to a very, very tiny work college in Vermont. And it was kind of half ecology majors, and the other half was some sort of agricultural based degrees. And that's where I really kind of solidified my degree in livestock, sustainable agriculture, and then I added a really big piece of draft power that sort of blended all of what I've learned into one degree.
And since college, you have essentially became a gypsy farmer, as you like to call yourself that. So talk to us about, the different experiences you've had since those college years and the different farms you've worked on since then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to call myself a gypsy farmer back then because I really was always moving, not because I didn't like what I was doing. I was just seeking every opportunity to learn something new or work with a different kind of animal or in a different animal based industry. And it led me all over the place. I moved well over 10 times, maybe even more, either with the seasons or as my interests changed. So I dabbled a little bit in Virginia right after I graduated in 2018. And I worked a little bit on the vegetable side and kind of found that I'm not so much like a plant kind of gal. So that ended up having me move a little bit over and having some experience in the polo industry. And growing up riding horses, I was really excited about it. It was really fun, very different, very like glamorous and clean and fast paced. Complete opposite of what I was doing before, weeding the gardens and going to markets and really getting very dirty. So I went and did a little bit in polo and moved a few more times here and there, working on other farms, interviewing places, trying to figure out where I wanted to go. I've worked at humane societies. I was a vet tech for a short time. Just kind of brought me all over the place. Now I'm living in northern New York State, on the Canadian line. So very, very far north, right in the middle of Amish country.
That's so cool. And I love that you went out to seek these different opportunities. I was recently having this conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about generationally where, of the generation, they were told that they had to find one job and they stayed with that job for their entire lives. And that generation raised me. And so I very much had that feeling that I needed to find a career and it needed to be like the one thing that I did. And, since kind of growing from that and now doing what I do, which is completely different than what I ever thought I would be doing, to hear that you took those opportunities to just do a bunch of different things to see what you liked doing, I have a lot of respect for that.
Thank you. Yeah, a big piece and a big chunk of time I was in Vermont when, post Virginia, post Rhode Island, post livestock manager kind of stuff. I really enjoyed my time on a all pastured meat and egg farm in Vermont, in Richmond, Vermont, called Maplewind Farm. And that's where I got all of my butchering experience. We had a flock of like 1,800 laying hens. We had pigs on pasture, beef on pasture, and we did meat birds. And during my time there, I was there for about 3 years. We scaled up to about 1,000 birds in a batch that we'd process on site. And it's a small USDA plant, so we are inspected. So I got to really dive deep in all of the logistics of what it takes to be a USDA certified inspected facility, which there really wasn't one around there. In my last year, I got to co-manage the facility, which was really cool. But being a part of every aspect of chores, collecting, washing, and packing eggs, feeding the birds and moving them on fresh pasture every morning. And then after the 8 weeks, we'd, collect them all up and bring them up to the main farm, and we'd process all of them. And eventually we'd package all of them and label them. And, I get to see the people, in person who come every day or every week to come and buy the products that we just spent, all that time and energy creating. Definitely one of my favorite jobs I've ever had was working there.
You can help support the stories of women in agriculture to be shared through the Rural Woman podcast on Patreon. What is Patreon? It's a membership-based platform that helps fund and support creators like me to create and produce content like this that you all love. New to the Rural Woman podcast Patreon is ad-free listening and patron-only bonus content and exclusive episodes. Learn more and join the patron gang today at patreon.com/The Rural Woman Podcast. You have mentioned about draft animals. I want to know more about this. I am really racking my brain to remember if I have spoken to any women who A, are as passionate about draft animals as you are, but B, have really been immersed in the culture where draft animals are still a main source of labor. So talk to us about, you said back in college, learning about draft animals, that being a big part of your education. Where did that love come from for you?
I'm not sure. I think, when you're a kid and you go to a farm and, there's a couple draft horses there and you get to pet them and they're just so big. Like as a kid, I don't think really there's many animals besides a cow that are really that big and that gentle, and they just move so slow. And I think just from a young age, I was always really drawn by their presence and be around them now. I mean, to me, it's very normal to drive down the road and have to wait behind a buggy that someone's, driving on a regular basis every day. I'm always, being mindful of there's a whole other community that live amongst us. And I just find how they live and how they work so fascinating. And it often kind of makes me slow down and just really pay just a little bit more attention to things around me and my work, and be very grateful for the beautiful scenery, and their farms are amazing to look at. And yesterday I even just driving, doing regular errands, there was someone working out in the field, and they had 4 Belgians together, and they're plowing. And to me, I just think that's the coolest thing. And it's almost like a daily thing that I get to see. So when I mention it to my family or friends, and it's not normal for them, but for me it is. And I think it's really great that I get to live and be surrounded by that, because I'm trying to make that a part of my everyday as well. Living and working, on a conventional farm, a 3,000 cow dairy, where everything is fairly high tech and calculated. We rely on a lot of, heavy machinery and feed carts and things like that. And right next door, it's Amish farms. So it's really cool to have both. And to have my mule team was a really cool happening. I'm almost going to be 30, so that's really scary. And I just kind of had this moment of, one day in my life I'll have a team of drafts, or I'll have a team of mules. And that was the one big life goal. A few days later, their ad came up, and it just kind of was meant to be. And I didn't hesitate on it and went to go see them and check them out. And within the next month, they were at our friend's farm, which is actually, they converted an Amish farm back to more, regular water power setup. So the mules are, they used to be an Amish team and now they're back, on an Amish farm. And I get to enjoy them kind of in their retirement. They're older, definitely slowed down and more at my level. I'm still learning too, but to get to learn from an experienced team and a team of mules was, a huge life goal for me that I can now say that has happened. And I also have oxen, which is really different. They've got giant horns and they're really big. So to have them, on the same property that I work on and get to see and interact with them every day is a huge privilege, and just really lucky to have that.
Yeah, and that's very cool. And like you mentioned, you work on a very regulated and large scale dairy operation, right? That is most likely the complete opposite of an Amish farm, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
your day to day is so different and it'll vary and it's so vast. So let's dig in right now to your draft animals and to what you're doing on your homestead and where you hope to go with that. And then we'll flip to the other side of the technology and all of the things that you get to do in your day-to-day life at work.
Yeah, so the oxen right now, I'm still actively training. I have a team of brown Swiss that are about 2 years old. Those are the guys that got the giant horns, and they're well over 1,000 pounds at this point. And they're in training still, but they can pull small loads and things like that. I do have them trained to work as a team in a yoke. So the traditional way that you'd see oxen and you drive them from the side. And then I also have found through mentors and through the Draft Animal Power Network, DAPNet, using a harness with a single ox has become one of my passions. And I'm glad I'm not alone because it's super fun. And I get to, bounce ideas off of the people that I know. It allows me to work these very large animals all by myself with confidence because I'm not trying to juggle, a 50-pound yoke in between these massive animals and they're, wiggling around and there's horns, and it can be hard to do that by yourself. I'm tall, but I'm not that tall, and it's a lot to juggle. So I really like to train them to be versatile in, the traditional yoke, and then to work with them one-on-one also really helps to build that bond with their commands. I can really do any task, big or small, depending if we need to pull a really big log out, then I can use both of them together. But if I want to do something like in a garden or like small row crop, that kind of thing, I can use a single animal and have that effect. So it's really cool in that way to have them accustomed to all of that equipment. The harness, I find, can be a little bit more comfortable for the animal. It helps kind of distribute the weight a little bit differently for them on their body. So it, they can, work all day long without becoming, too exhausted. I have a team of jerseys that I'm working with. They're more of a start and sell team. I have never worked with jerseys in like the draft sense. I've worked with them in the past, like in dairies and on the calf manager side. So it's really cool to work with like a different breed of cow. Really tricky trying to even find jerseys. They're not very popular around here. But I have a tiny little calf yoke, and I got them from local farms and everything, and was able to put a really nice pair together and halter broke them and trained them, and they do fairly well. And now they're a couple months old and their horns are starting to grow. And I'm hoping, in time they'll find like their next step, their next farm, and Teamster to take them on and show them over the summer. So they're sort of like my side project I've been doing. Um, I was able to work with a Holstein team that I put together from the conglomerate of calves that I just see every day in my job. Every once in a while, we'll get, a random, like full Holstein calf instead of the Angus Holstein crosses. And I just kind of saw these two, and they were born within the same week. And it just doesn't happen to have pure Holstein bull calves born that close together. And they looked really nice, really great conformation. Stuck them together, started training them, and I asked my boss, "Hey, do you mind if they don't go on the truck? Can I find a way to get them out there and maybe make them a show team?" And it worked, and they went off to a really nice family in Vermont, and they showed in Maine at Freiburg Fair, and they did really well. And it was really cool to just see, they didn't, go on the truck, and they didn't go off to just in the traditional avenue that they'd go. I was able to kind of divert them off into a different line of work, and just seeing them today, like all grown up, and they're almost a year old now. So it was just really cool to see that. I've just been really enjoying working with different breeds, since I can't keep them all, but I can at least start and then, pass them off to the next Teamster for them to enjoy. But yeah, it's just been really cool.
Very cool. And just something for me hearing this, it's just so different, right? Like I am in production agriculture. We have combines, we have all of those like things, but I'm looking out at the old garage and the yoke is out there. Like the yoke was used here on this farm at some point, and like to see that you're still carrying on these traditions in a way of interest and in a way of passion. It's very neat. So you had mentioned, getting your team of mules was a lifelong dream for you. What are your plans for the mules? You said they were a little bit older, but what do you hope to do with them?
Yes, they're old mules, new to me. They still have a lot of life left in them. I'm really excited. The property that they're at, they're starting to do a little bit of logging, bringing in, just logs from a woodlot that they have to the house to make firewood. So we can hitch them up to a little 4-cart that has like a seat on it, and just drive them out there into the woods, and a couple chains and some hooks, and bring out the logs over, closer to the house so that they can buck them up and make some firewood that way. The options are endless really with them. As wherever you can walk, you can put a horse or the oxen. And when you have the 4-cart, it's sort of like the Swiss Army knife of, draft equipment, where you can really hook anything onto that from there on out. You can carry stuff on it, your chainsaw, you can carry, lunch pail or whatever you need, extra chains, things like that. So it's really handy tool. And they're bomb proof. So they're not ones to, get scared at something and then run off. They're very much so adapted to this kind of work. Mules are very agile and really good with their feet. They know exactly where to walk. And as long as you have confidence in them and they listen to you, you really can get a lot done. And they are more heat tolerant than horses. So even in a really hot day, they're able to sort of work through that a little bit better. Mules tend to be a lot more popular in the South, like Tennessee and Virginia. You see mules a lot more often down there. So up here in the North, it's kind of like a fun thing, different thing to see mules out in the field instead of, the classic Belgian, or like the black Percherons are really popular around here as well. So they're just super handy to work with.
Let's flip to the other side of your farming now, where you are the calf manager for a very large dairy. So tell us about that and how you've been able to help grow that farm.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm thinking in the moment here, I started at a farm where I had my 4-H heifers. That's where I had my first job. And I actually still wear my Carhartt bibs that my mom got for me for Christmas. To this day, they're kind of falling apart now. But since 2010, I've been wearing these bibs. But I started there and it was a 70 cow tie stall, really tiny, tiny farm, milk farm. And I was the calf manager there. So, every so often we'd get a calf born. I think maybe the most I've ever taken care of was like between 10 and 12 calves at any given time when we were really full. So that's really small scale, 70 head and a tie stall. Now I'm working on a 3,000 cow with a 70 head rotary, and we milk 3 times a day. Sometimes I have calves waiting for me, and there's about 10, upwards of 16 in just a 24-hour period. And it's a lot, just on a bigger scale. And the beef side, the beef market is going really well. Prices are really good. And sometimes the conception rate for a dairy cow is a little bit better with using Angus to breed our Holstein dairy cows with. So with the beef calves sort of being a byproduct, it actually is a really good steady flow of income for the farm. A bought in 2-year-old heifer to replace any milk cow in the herd that we have to part with is upwards of $3,600 at this time. When I first started here, it was about $1,500 or so for a replacement heifer. So having the beef, every couple days we would get all of our beef calves picked up. So Mondays and Thursdays are pickup days. So that's a nice, regular income there from the beef side. And now we've decided to expand on the calf program by keeping heifers and intentionally breeding to have heifer calves to stay on site to replenish our herd. Our barns aren't big enough at the moment to 100% replenish on site. So we're trying to do about 40 heifer calves a month, which is about half of what we would need each month to fully replenish our herd to keep our numbers where they need to be. So it's been really exciting to be the point person to help make these really big decisions on, what hutches are we going to buy? Are we going to do hutches? Are they going to be, in an outside hutch environment? Are they going to be in a barn environment? Are they in group housing? Are they going to be individual? And then it's the whole, what milk replacer are we going to use? And the vaccine protocol we had to make from scratch and then adjust and go from there based on what we were seeing with illness and things going on, which is very individual to a farm. So it's just a lot of different puzzle pieces, but it's all kind of coming together. And at the moment, I've got 3 groups, so about, anywhere between 30 and 35 calves in the program. And I've sent 2 groups off to their next step to another farm that has more room to house them between the weaning period and the breeding period. And then when they're ready to calve in, they will get brought back to the farm here. And I get to kind of see the full circle come through and then hopefully take care of their calf from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've relatively been at this farm for a short amount of time, but it seems like there's been a lot of positive changes that have happened.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely has been. It's been a really humbling experience, and I really had to trust my years of experience and my mentors that I go to and ask questions. Some of these purchases are really big purchases. Deciding to go with individual hutches is very expensive. Group housing is nearly free. So to kind of have the knowledge to back up these big decisions, it can be really intimidating. And being a woman in agriculture in and of itself is very intimidating. So going up to, all of my bosses are men and saying, hey, can you drop a couple grand? Like, can I have you order this? Like, it's, sometimes it's a lot of money. And I explain why, why I like these jackets or why I like these hutches, or I don't like these bottles anymore. Can we change to these bottles and this style nipple because their nursing is different? And, these are the results I'm seeing and they're aspirating too much. So I like these bottles, but can we change this about, the nipple style? And can you order this again? And I need more of that. And there's a lot of, sometimes on the fly decisions, but I have to really think about, okay, what's going to improve my program, and kind of pitch those ideas to then, make it happen. It's really exciting. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if they're going to go for this or not. And I go and, ask a mentor or do some research. And so I've grown a lot in, learning how to communicate my ideas and backing it up with solid information. And then it's just time and having to sort of, they put a lot of trust in me to let me sort of take this big project on. And it's the future of their herd. So, every day I have that in the back of my mind of like, I'm in charge of the future, and it's super humbling, but also very rewarding. And to, be farming for nearly 12 years, like it's kind of like, oh, finally moment, like, oh, finally I get the results of all those years of learning and trusting my gut with decisions. And it's like finally, like you just sit and you're like, oh, I think I've made it now. Like, I think I made it.
Yeah. And what a good feeling for you as a young woman in this industry, and to make those big decisions and to have the knowledge to back it up. That to me is a very empowering thing.
Absolutely. And also, like, on the daily, I admit, oh, I don't really know anything about that. Or, oh, I would like to know more about this. Like, who do I go find this information from? And just doing cold calls or reaching out to people and just asking these questions. Like, I feel like in other jobs, I either hadn't had the courage to do that or didn't think, I could do it. But now it's just sort of like second nature to just fully admit, like, yep, I know nothing about that, or, oh, I made a mistake. And like just saying it, and it's nothing, like I don't internalize that.
Right.
And with farming, it's like you can do absolutely everything right and the animal still dies.
Mm-hmm.
And to like feel that and to just know, like, okay, like, I guess, just sometimes it just doesn't work.
Right. And you have only as much control as you have, right? And there's the saying, if you have livestock, you have dead stock, right?
Absolutely.
And as a city kid, that was traumatizing for me to learn.
Yes. And trust me, there's been a couple pretty hard losses of, individual animals that, you invest a lot of time and emotional, feelings towards, and you do everything you can to save them. And, sometimes you have to make that hard decision. And it just really, like, sometimes it's like, oh, like, can I really do this? Like, am I really supposed to be doing this? And I'm like, yep, because tomorrow's tomorrow and I gotta.
And the cows need to be milked tomorrow, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to talk about the community aspect of agriculture for you. How have you found in your area, and really of all the places you've traveled, the community piece of agriculture? What does it mean to you?
Oh, it means everything. I feel like being a rural woman in agriculture sort of puts you in this box of like complete isolation. Like, again, Amish country, it's not like I can, not like you got a lot of neighbors and they're not going to text you. So you kind of have to create your own community, whether it be virtual or you got to be willing to drive over an hour or more to have, a physical meetup with like a group of people. So like the Draft Animal Power Network, they do some things like throughout the year, and they're a very unique group where it really is anyone and everyone who's interested in draft power, whether it be with horses, mules, oxen, and things like that. So I have like a branch of like those kinds of friends and mentors that had helped me get to where I am with my experience and passion with the draft power. And then kind of through the 4-H and showing cows, we have a small herd of show cows here, and we do the local fairs and shows. So we have kind of like the show side and that family and friends and group of people that we get to see, during that time of year, and we can network and catch up. And that is also linked with 4-H. So the local 4-H kids and groups also show. So it's been really cool to, now being an adult, having my own animals and showing and getting to see all of the other kids there watching me, show these giant milk cows. My arms are all the way up in the air, and this giant cow and massive udder. And, this past year we did really well. We got a lot of really great, prizes and titles and things like that. It's just so rewarding to have, families or kids come up and just tell you like, hey, I really liked watching you out there, like, good job. And it's just, you don't really expect that because you're just, just out there and you're so focused on working with your animal that you don't really fully see like who is out there watching me right now. Like, it's kind of a big responsibility, but it's also like a huge honor, and I definitely don't take it lightly. Some really cool moments to kind of see like I was that girl once, looking up to, the adults who I thought, oh, they're so old. And now I'm the old one and they're coming up to me and they're like, oh, nice job, or just compliments like, oh, I want to be like you one day, those kinds of things. Like it just really, that's what it's all about. And connection with animals is just super important. And getting to mentor, I have one of an older like 4-H student doing a project with the rabbits, and I have a rabbitry, and not a lot of people can have animals at their home. And she comes and she did a breeding project for her SAE and won some grant money because she did such a good job with her presentation. And we decided on which rabbits she wanted to breed, and they had the babies, and she's doing all the work behind learning genetics and the whole, breeding side of that project, and getting to help facilitate that and take care of the animals with her so she can have that experience is really awesome. Because I was that kid wanting, the cow in my backyard and couldn't, have a cow at my house. So now I do have, the goats and the chickens and the rabbits and the herd of cats and everything that I could imagine here. And I just want to share it with everybody.
Yeah. Well, and what a full circle moment for you, right? To be that person that these kids can learn from. And, you needed that person when you were younger, and now you are that person for the young folks. So that's amazing. And you should be very, very proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, I'm very surprised I did not cry through the whole thing. It's really hard not to get super emotional or misty.
The feel-good misty moments. Absolutely. So, Madeline, what is next for you? What are some future goals for you and your homestead and your job and all of the things?
Definitely just focusing on spending more time, with training, working with the mules, working the oxen, but also expanding the calf program, learning how I want everything to be organized, doing that whole side of it, more of the like professional side, and building a little bit more of community with, the 4-H kids and some of the local women in my area, trying to get us out a little bit, even though it's on a virtual basis. But I started this little page called Maintaining the Level of Dirt. And it's all about, you can't really have like your house completely clean, your barn's never completely clean. Let's get rid of that expectation of having to have everything perfect and neat, because it's unrealistic. So let's focus on like maintaining. How do we just like maintain, this level of, sanity and being in the moment and connecting with other women who, can feel really isolated, and we don't live close together, but we're all generally doing very similar things like caring for animals, or we're on a homestead or dairy farm. Some of these women have kids, and, getting a babysitter and going out, and, it becomes a little bit unrealistic. Maybe you just don't have enough energy to do that. So this page sort of like pulls everybody together. You can come and go as you please. We did a couple like virtual chat meetups, which was really fun to kind of see everybody's face. So maybe one day we'll get it to the point where we'll have actual in-person meetups, or like a potluck every once in a while, to just, have a group of people to lean on when we're so far apart from each other. But we have just such a common connection with, working with animals or farming, that it doesn't have to feel so isolating, and you don't have to actually leave your home. It's really hard to find farm sitters. So
Right.
I wanted to kind of create an opportunity where we can have our cake and eat it too, in a way.
Absolutely. I love that. And really, like, building any connection, whether it's in person or online, like, we live isolated lives in more ways than one. And to be able to find women who are passionate about the same life that you have. And, we can farm completely different from one another, and we still come together as rural women. And really, it's a testament to all of us, because we're pretty strong women, and you are included in that club. So, Madeline, my last question for you is, what's the most rewarding part about being a rural woman for you?
I think the most rewarding part for me is to wake up and not feel like I have to go to work. That dreaded, like, your alarm goes off and you're like, oh, I got to go to work. It's like, I get to wake up, and I don't have any of those feelings, because what I do for work is what I do in my free time, and farming is my passion. And to have the privilege to be able to do what I love for a living, and have that be basically my backyard, is something that I've worked really hard for, and really lucky to have at this point in time. So I think that's the most rewarding part, is to just do what I love, and have it be my living, and it's my passion. So it's really exciting.
All good things. For the folks who would like to connect with you online, where can they find you?
So I'm really only on Facebook. I'm not super into Instagram, not really even sure how it works, but I do have a page called Hedgerow Homestead, and that's where I've been posting and building a community through that page to follow not only what I do on the dairy, but a little bit of like the homestead and other things that I do day to day. It's just all on that page on Facebook. I also have my personal Facebook page too. That's just under my name, but it's very similar to my kind of homestead page. So,
and I will link those in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Madeline, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer. A special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre and Carrie Munven from Laystone Farms. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at The Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story. Did you know that you can get this same great episode of the Rural Woman Podcast ad-free? I get it. Listening to ads during a podcast isn't always my favorite either. But in order to keep the lights and coffee pot on here at the Rural Woman Podcast Studios, they are necessary. I am so grateful to each and every one of my sponsors, but if you yourself would like to skip the ads while supporting the show, consider joining me over on Patreon. Patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast get ad-free episodes starting at Tier 5 on their podcast player of choice each week, plus some other great benefits. Find out more by heading to the link in today's show notes to learn how you can become a patron through Patreon.